Listvianka is located around 70 kilometers southeast of Irkutsk. It's a prosperous village on the banks of Lake Baikal, the most popular holiday area in Siberia. This is where our extraordinary journey begins, on the Circum-Baikal train. This former idyllic fishing village that lies alongside the Angara River has been transformed into the Lake Baikal Riviera, with promenade, numerous hotels and restaurants. The inhabitants of Irkutsk also visit this fine Siberian resort, and Listvianka caters for one and all. Close to the harbour, the daily fish market is very popular. In all weathers, smoked fish is not only offered for sale, but is also eaten here. Fish is the region's speciality. Smoked and dried fish hangs from every market stall, along with Russian dolls, stone seals, wooden carvings, and traditional Siberian headwear. Almost every house in Listvianka offers accommodation. The traditional, small, timber-built houses are a reminder of the good old days that have managed to survive despite growing tourism. Music is everywhere, and the gentle strains of the balalaika soothe the rich character of the Siberian soul. Both men and women are proud of their traditional clothing. And at every opportunity, a glass of vodka is raised to toast good health and a long life. On the edge of the village, the Baikal Museum provides information about Lake Baikal's plants, wildlife and ecology. The famous Baikal seal and various varieties of fish are contained within a huge water tank that was inaugurated in 2004. Local guides explain the history of Lake Baikal, and its size is highlighted by a model of the lake, a unique natural wonder in the heart of Siberia. It's a truly massive lake. Outside the museum's entrance, there's a ferry. Indeed, it's slowly making its approach right now. This is the easiest crossing point of the Angara River. On the opposite side is the railway terminal. In Port Baikal is the modern Circum-Baikal that takes a full day to travel round Lake Baikal. The journey begins on an historic section of the railroad, and one of the most difficult to be found on the Trans-Siberian Railroad that travels from Moscow to Vladivostok. Indeed, this section is a masterpiece of Russian railroad engineering. Built between 1902 and 1904, according to the design of engineer Samremovich. This section was one of the most expensive railroad projects in the world. Once essential, and today, the longest museum in the world. Today, the Circum-Baikal line is a unique tourist attraction, both with the Russian people and also visitors from abroad. The combination of technical expertise and fascinating scenery turns this journey into unforgettable adventure in the land of the holy Baikal. After a short time, it's the first stop of the journey, and passengers are able to disembark. Ulanov, a small station that is still used by the locals. Here, there are no roads. The lakeside is close by. It's a little like standing on a beach. Railway enthusiasts are able to take a close look at the workings of the railroad as well as the engine. A fascinating experience. Next, photos of the engine. And then the engine drivers return to their modern cabin. Our journey resumes. The famous Trans-Siberian Railroad, the longest railroad in the world, was built at the command of Tsar Alexander III more than a century ago. Initially, the large Siberian Railroad traveled from Moscow to Port Baikal, and from Vladivostok to Misuvaya on the other side of Lake Baikal. The lake was the final challenge. The mountain range south of Irkutsk could not be avoided due to the lake, and the train engines were not powerful enough for the mountain terrain. So, based on a similar project in America, the idea was to cross Russia's largest lake by a ship that would be both ferryboat and icebreaker in one. But more of this later, when we will see how the engineers solved this problem. Sumiha, our second stop. A tiny, dreamy village and simple wooden huts. Few people live here. Passengers leave the train and walk alongside the rails to a redundant old tunnel. Today, the rails are situated outside the tunnel. This is a good opportunity to examine tunnel construction at close quarters, the method used, the length, and the pitch black of this humid hole in the mountain. The passengers continue to walk alongside the rails to a wider section where they wait for the train. But there's entertainment when a group of young people use this time to perform a dance for the waiting passengers. Soon, a female train conductor announces by megaphone that the journey is about to recommence. The train approaches the group of travelers that is now eager to experience the next leg of the journey. As there's no platform, getting onto the train proves a little difficult for some. However, eventually, each of the passengers manages to climb on board. Back to the history of this railroad. In Port Baikal, the trains were transported by ferry boat. And in fine weather, the crossing to Misuvaya took about 3.5 hours. A British-built ferryboat was delivered in sections and then assembled in a specially built shipyard in Listvyanka. Its construction took 2 years. The huge ferryboat was able to transport a total of 25 train carriages, 300 passengers, and 500 tons of cargo. However, due to the severity of winter, passengers and their luggage were forced to travel by sleigh, a far more arduous and time-consuming mode of transport. So, a new plan was necessary. As the train slows down, there's a good view across a large bay. Our third destination, Polovinaya, a wonderful place, and featured extensively in many a holiday brochure. This small Siberian village is like something from a fairy tale. Tiny wooden huts nestle at the mouth of the river that flows into Lake Baikal. The appearance of the villages is reminiscent of bygone times. Men with long beards and large Berkatan caps, typical of their community. This stop is used for a meal break in the bay, and those who can bear it take a swim in the icy water to a nearby ice floe. In summer, Lake Baikal reaches a temperature of 16 degrees centigrade, and in winter, it's covered by a 1.5-meter layer of ice. Passengers take advantage of the stop to explore a nearby railway bridge and an old steam engine. The steel construction of the bridge looks even more impressive from close by and highlights the amazing achievements of the railroad's creators. In the middle of the frozen river and seated on a wooden box next to an ice hole is a fisherman made of ice who waits patiently for his next catch. An enchanting scene. The journey continues slowly on what is today a single-track line. There's still some distance to travel until we reach the railroad terminal in Sludyanka. Construction of this section of the lake's east side commenced in 1902. At that time, a line was built from Irkutsk to Angara and then on to Port Baikal. It took only 2 years to construct this highly challenging 84-kilometer section. As the landscape passes by, various screens provide an impression of Lake Baikal, accompanied by a little alcoholic beverage and good cheer. Various technical necessities were employed in the construction of this railroad. Extra heavy rails, special cross ties, and twice as many as normal. In order to conquer the rocky terrain, to lay 1 kilometer of track, 1 carriage of explosives was used. Thus originated one of the most scenic sections of the Trans-Siberian Railroad. From time to time, we pass a number of sidings that are the remains of the original line, and are today used to facilitate the flow of rail traffic. Nearby is a small coastal village with its wooden buildings. In high summer, a popular resort among city dwellers. Fishermen's houses are to be seen for much of the journey, as well as huge ice floes that melt slowly in the heat of the summer months. Lake Baikal originated around 20 million years ago and is one of the oldest lakes in the world. It's the largest freshwater reservoir on Earth. The length of the lake measures 636 kilometers. It is between 27 and 80 kilometers wide and has a total surface area of 31,500 square kilometers. 336 rivers supply the 1,637-meter deep lake that has only one outflow, the Angara River. It contains no less than 1/5 of the fresh water supply of our entire planet. Next we arrive at Circum, our fourth and final stop. The train comes to a halt outside a tunnel, the slopes of which are supported by a sturdy wall. A secure area was constructed at the lakeside for tourists, with a fine view of glistening ice floes and the vast expanses of the huge lake. Just as unique as the lake's crystal clear water that is of drinking quality is its wildlife and plants. More than 1,500 species are to be found here. Two-thirds of the region's animals and plants are indigenous. A notice board on the rock wall outside the tunnel entrance explains that this is Tunnel 18, that was known as Circum 3 by the engineers who built it. The notice board won't be spotted by everyone. Now the final section of our journey, and even more to learn. By the 30th of September 1904, a train was able to travel the entire new line that ran alongside Lake Baikal, and the golden buckle of the Trans-Siberian Belt was complete. A gigantic technical masterpiece with 39 tunnels, 352 bridges, 77 supporting walls, and around 300 buildings. Regular railroad traffic on this section commenced on the 15th of October 1905, a milestone in railroad history. For the construction of what at that time was a remarkable project, the most highly qualified and experienced engineers were required. They were engaged via international tender. 28 specialists were chosen, and they brought with them many skilled laborers from their home country. A truly international construction site was created. In addition to laborers from each corner of Russia, there were also Italians, Germans, Albanians, and Austrians, plus a number of unskilled workers from China and Japan. The slow train often passes small settlements that are situated between the railroad and the lake. Settlements in which time seems to have stood still. Following 50 years of its successful operation, some notable changes were made to the railroad. The mountains could now be overcome. The steep terrain was no longer a major problem for the new electric trains. And the section between Irkutsk and Sludyanka could thus be shortened to around 40 kilometers. Important decisions had to be made because in Irkutsk a dam was planned for the Angara River, which meant that the railway line to Port Baikal would be submerged by water. On the 30th of June 1956, the last train of the Trans-Siberian Railroad travelled from one end of the line to the other. It seemed that this was the final chapter. The old Baikal Railroad fell into oblivion. The second railroad was removed, and all fell into disrepair. It's only in recent years that the scenic section alongside Lake Baikal has been renovated in order to attract tourism. A unique landscape, plus a remarkable achievement of railroad engineering. And success was guaranteed. In addition to the railway, in summer the tourists come here to simply enjoy the surroundings. They're attracted by the simple accommodation and fine bathing facilities. Following the discontinuation of the original railroad, many of the region's inhabitants were forced to seek employment elsewhere. But now tourism has opened up many new opportunities. Lake Baikal becomes narrower at its southern end. The opposite side appears. Here, there are fewer ice flows. We approach the end of the lake. A church tower appears from around a bend. Clearly an uninhabited area. The pretty little church belongs to a small village that extends along the slopes of the lake. A number of fishermen and their families live here, but in this region life is hard. The other side of the lake is getting nearer and nearer. The southern point of the blue pearl of Siberia, where the holy lake comes to an end. In the evening, we arrive at Sludyanka, the largest station of the Circum-Baikal Railroad, and the link to the Trans-Siberian Railroad. The town's history began with the construction of the Baikal Railroad, and in 1936, Sludyanka was given the status of a city. The mining of marble created jobs here until the decline of communism. The engine depot dates back to 1905 and is the town's largest employer. So it's hardly surprising that the train station and its tracks dominate the town. Women with baskets await the arriving passengers and offer them numerous fresh herbs. This is all that they can sell. Here, the smallest income is important. Sludyanka is the only town in the world with a station constructed of marble. Indeed, the quarry lay nearby, so bringing it from elsewhere would have been more expensive. A stone memorial outside the station building greets the arriving passengers. And inside the station, we take a final glimpse of the Trans-Siberian Railroad, proud and mighty. And thank you, the remarkable Circum-Baikal Railroad.